Good afternoon. I'm just fiddling around with a few lights because it's starting to get a little bit dark out there. So I think as we go on during the course of this live, we will probably find more and more that we need a light. So I'll just fiddle around with those now. But welcome. My name is Helen Jennings. I am a Stampin' Up demonstrator based here in the UK. And normally it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening when I come in and we have a bit of a crafty play. But this evening I have one of my bingo evenings. So rather than coming in at 6 o'clock, I'm coming in now at just after 4. I hadn't poured my tea out, so obviously priorities. I needed to stop and pour my tea out. So apologies that I'm a minute or two late, but tea is now on hand. Just going to find us on the laptop. So this week we have, our project this week was the Perfectly Plaid bundle. So the gorgeous stamp set that we have here with all the trees, the punch that coordinates with that, these gorgeous plaid papers that are just stunning. And as you can see, I've been cutting into my packs. On one side you have this sort of plaid type, tartan type effect with the gold foiling in it, and on the back of the papers you get a more sort of some of them are quite Christmassy, like the stockings. Some of them, like the spotty ones, are quite generic. Those stripes are really lovely, and they make really good. That one's got lots of holly on, more spots, Christmas trees. They make really good masculine papers as well, mail cards, for just quite generic mail cards. So certainly not just a bundle for Christmas, and you also get the really cute little jingle bells, and there's this lovely shaded spruce and gold ribbon. So lots of really lovely things in this bundle of products. And on Monday I shared with you some of the things that I'd already made with it. The gold pizza boxes are part of that bundle as well. So we've got some tags and a tissue box, another tag. This one has been clear embossed on the top to make them shiny, some silver embossing, some coloured trees and sequins. So a real variety of projects that we'd already made. This was the one that we made on Monday, our Case the Catalogue, and we did this doing some sort of faux watercolouring by stamping up the stamps and spritzing them before stamping. So that was the projects that we'd made as of Monday, when we came in live on Monday morning to share the product of the week and to make that initial card that we cased from the catalogue. So today I've got a couple of different projects that I'm going to use. I'm going to create with the stamps and the punch and the papers, and some are using these colourways, but not all of them. So let us put some of these things to one side for now and find ourselves a bit of space in front of us to have a bit of a play. And let's have a look at what we're going to create first. Now, I've been so busying around this afternoon, getting myself ready for the bingo this afternoon and doing a little bit towards this today, that I have a feeling I may have a couple of bits that I haven't got in my basket. Let's have a look. Let me just stretch over and see if I can find my missing pieces so that we can create this card. So we're going to need a piece of gorgeous grape. So that's that there, that's all good. We're going to need some lovely lipstick. And I can see some of that just there, and we're going to need a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock to make our card base with. So I will just grab some of that as well. So I hope you're all well and have all been enjoying a good week so far. I've been having a very busy week so far with there's a piece of Whisper White. We'll just make our card the other orientation, so that's fine. I've had a class at Maudsley on Tuesday evening, which was lovely, and we had a new lady with us who was a new stamper. It's always lovely to have brand new stampers for whom this is a whole new adventure that we can help on their journey, so that's always good fun. Got things crashing all around me. So that was Tuesday, and then yesterday we had our mega Christmas card stack. So I do a stamper stack once a month, but this was the mega Christmas stamper stack. So whereas in a general stamper stack we make 6 cards, 3 designs, 2 of each. The Christmas one, the aim normally is to make 10, so 5 designs, 2 of each. But we were set a challenge yesterday to see if we could make 12, and we rose to that challenge. So yesterday afternoon, the lovely ladies that were here yesterday afternoon, they knocked out 12 fabulous cards. So they were the consummate professionals, no bother. So that was a good fun afternoon, and as I say, this evening I've got my bingo. Saturday morning I've got a class where we are going to be creating the Countdown to Christmas kit, so that's good fun. And then it will be sort of time, I think, to do my final preparations ready, because next Wednesday I fly out to Germany for On Stage, the Stampin' Up convention. So from Wednesday until Sunday next week I will actually be in Germany, so that's very exciting. Looking at new catalogues, new products, celebration, spring, summer. It'll be all good fun. So that's next week that we're going to be doing that. But for today, we're going to have a little look at this card that I've got in front of me. I just need to grab one more thing. And then I think we will be pretty good to go. So yeah, sorry I hadn't grabbed everything beforehand. I was, as I say, it's been a busy day so far. Busy getting all these things ready for all these lovely events that are coming up, as well as trying to get myself ready to go to Germany next week, which very definitely isn't happening very quickly, but I'm sure that will. Over the weekend I will start to hopefully bring that one together. Okie dokie, let's go. Right, so the first card that we are going to make today follows on from the idea of the faux watercolouring and spritzing your stamps that we did on Monday. And as I was sort of browsing Pinterest earlier in the week, somebody had pinned a card to a Pinterest board, sort of with this stamp set in mind, but it actually wasn't a stamped card. It was a card that had obviously been created somewhere along the line for a charity Christmas card, and it was lots of really pretty coloured trees. And I looked at it and I thought, I really quite like that. There must be something we can do with that idea of multicoloured trees with sort of like a, and they were really sort of watercoloured, probably even more so than this, sort of that sort of run watercolory type effect. And I thought that looks like good fun. I'm sure there must be something we can do along that line with this stamp set and these punches to create a Christmas card. So that is where this sort of quite unusual coloured Christmas card came from, where the idea sprung from. So I am going to create a Whisper White base. So let's see if that is, yeah, it's 14.9 centimetres that way. Let's score it at 10.5 this way. Fold that so that the bumpy bit is in the middle. And we have our card base. And then I'm going to take a piece of lovely lipstick, because this is all really nice bright colours. So this is, couldn't get any further than the reds and greens in the papers if we tried. So I'm going to cut this at 14.4 by 10. So that is that one, just there. And then this one just here, I'm going to cut at 13.9 by 9.5. Now on the card it looks like it's much smaller than that, but that's because I've run it through that corrugated folder, and the very nature of the corrugation, if that is such a word, is that it sort of shrinks the paper, because the paper obviously becomes wavy, so it sort of is the width of the paper is taken up with some of those waves, so it sort of is then not quite so wide. But it started off at 13.9 by 9.5, so it started off life just that little bit smaller than our lovely lipstick layer. So that is that. So let us grab our corrugated embossing folder. Now my version of this one is one of the old style. Obviously I haven't replaced it because it's still functioning, but so the sandwich that I'm going to use for this is the sandwich that you use for the old style Sizzix 3D embossing folders. If it was one of the new 3D embossing folders, I would be grabbing my nice new blue plate, but it's not, so I just need one of these clear plates. So we'll run that through there. I'll put the big shot back together because we are going to need it again in a minute. And in fact, in a little while, I am going to need that new blue plate. Excuse me one moment while I just turn my heater down a little bit. Suddenly feeling very warm in here. Must be all the excitement of being here with you. So we have our white card base, our lovely lipstick matte, and voila, our corrugated gorgeous grape. And you can see how much that has shrunk. So whereas it was just a smidge smaller all the way around than that lovely lipstick, where we have run it through the corrugated embossing folder, it has shrunk quite considerably. But that's all okay, it gives it that lovely texture. So that's our base layers of our card. I'm now going to grab some shimmery white card and the tree punch and the stamp set. And the stamp that I'm using for this one is this stamp here, this sort of quite sort of stylized open leaf tree. I do really quite like this tree. Well, I like all of them. They all have their own place, but for this sort of more modern design, if you like, sort of a more fresh modern design, this sort of fresh modern tree works beautifully. So I am going to take my block and my tree, And have a slurp of my tea because I have still got a silly sore throat. Ah, that's good. Right, so we have our tree. So what I'm going to use to ink up our tree is some of our stamping white markers. And again, I've chosen some really bright, fresh colours. So I've got Bermuda Bay, Grapefruit Grove, lovely lipstick, obviously gorgeous grape, and some Pineapple Punch. So really bright, bold colours. And what I'm going to do with these bright, bold colours is I'm just going to take the brush end and I'm going to sort of spot, just tap the side of my pen all over that tree. I'm going to bring in the different colours, and obviously each one of these will be slightly different because it's going to be very different as to where the colour has laid down. Now, one thing I will suggest is with particularly with your yellow one, it's worth just scribbling it off on a block once you've, and probably the same with this one. So with the paler colours, you certainly want to scribble it off so that you're not contaminating your pen with the other colours. And the only one I haven't used is Bermuda Bay. So let's pop a bit of that down there as well. So if you're watching live, do come on and say hello. And even if you're watching on catch up, do say hello. It's lovely to know who's been joining us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spritz. I'm going to give that a bit of a spritz. And then I'm going to give it a bit of a stamp. And you get a watercolory effect, multicoloured tree. I'm going to take a bit of kitchen towel and just mop up the excess on that. I'm not going to worry too much because I'm about to go in and do it all over again. And you will find it will be very dependent on how much water goes on your tree as to how sort of much the colour spreads on the trees. Some pink. Some green, some Grapefruit Grove, and last but not least, some Pineapple Punch. Hi Sarah. It's quite nice to do something a bit funkier, isn't it, with Christmas? It doesn't have to all be green and red. So there we are. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sort of as I leave that, as that sort of doing its own thing in the background there, you find that it does sort of spread out a bit more. I mean, obviously, if you didn't want it to do that, you could probably go in and sort of dab it straight away. But I quite like that sort of watercolory effect. So I am doing this on shimmery white card. Right, as this is the last one, I'm going to give these all a bit of a scribble. So Bermuda Bay, lovely lipstick, gorgeous grape, Grapefruit Grove, and last but by no means least, a bit of Pineapple Punch. And a bit of a spritz and a bit of a stamp. There. So let's give this a clean up. There we go, cleaned our stamp. We'll pop that back in the box so we can find it in a minute, and that's just giving that last tree time to do its thing. And then we'll take our punch. Now, obviously, I should have punched these at the bottom of that piece of card so that I could fit it in my punch properly, but that's a minor problem. So let's line our tree up. And there's one. Two. And last but not least, 3. And before I punch that, you can see all those different colours in that tree, really pretty. So the bits of cardstock I've got on there are some Bermuda Bay. Now let's just remind myself of what size I cut those to. I cut them to 4 centimetres by 5 centimetres. So let's bring in our trimmer. So let's cut a strip that's 4 centimetres. And let's swing it round and cut a strip that's 15. And then we can go 10. It's good testing for your maths, isn't it, this? And 5. So there's our 3 little pieces of Bermuda Bay cardstock. The other thing we're going to need to punch out of cardstock is one of our labels. So this is the timeless label. So let's stamp one of those out of Bermuda Bay, and then we could stamp one out of our shimmery white cardstock like that. Job's a good one. And let's grab some lovely lipstick ink and the Merry Christmas greetings from the stamp set. Pop that up onto a block. Let's get my bit of sponge out, because we're using photopolymer stamps. It's always a good idea to have your foam mat underneath. Merry Christmas. Give that a bit of a clean. It really isn't going to be long until it really is upon us now, is it? About 7 weeks, I think, wasn't it, until Christmas, something like that. So really not very long. Right, so let's get our snail out just for quickness, and we will pop that to one side for a minute. Oh, dropped a tree on the floor. We'll just pop that tree onto that piece of Bermuda Bay. And this one on here, and this one on here. Oh, let me have a little look somewhere. Looking to see if I can find one of my journaling pens. I had one not long ago If not, we'll go for another option. Aha. I like these journaling pens because they are a really nice fine line. Sorry, just fiddling about with my laptop, bringing it down to see you there. So all I'm going to do with my journaling pen is I'm going to put some faux stitching around the outside of these trees. Just helps to give them, to pop them up a little bit from the background. So for our bingo tonight, we've got 3 nice little projects. So we've got a little snowman Christmas card, and I've got a little hanging ornament that we're making with some of the mercury acetate and some of the dies from the snow globe set. And we're also going to do a mini curvy keepsake box. All of that, as well as eating snacks. I've been and bought some mince pies, obviously, as it's Christmas themed, some mini stollen, some Christmassy flavoured crisps. So I've cut this Bermuda Bay label in half, so that I can explode it out and have a little bit poking at the top and a little bit poking at the bottom. And then I've got some of the striped gorgeous grape ribbon that I'm just going to fold over and have sticking across the back there. Let's find some tear and tape. Let's hold that down a second while I just get a little bit of tape. And obviously it doesn't matter what it looks like on the back, because what happens on the back of the label will stay on the back of the label. Oh. That's that. Ooh, and then we want some white twine, and I've just had a horrible thought in that I've dropped some of the white twine in a box ready to go this evening, but I've got a feeling I did have more than one roll. Oh no, that one's very vanilla. Rummage, rummage, rummage. This is a very thin one, but that will... This was one I think that came out of a kit somewhere else, somewhere along the line. So it's not quite as thick as that other baker's twine. So what we'll do is we'll fold it in half and make it a double bow, just to give it a little bit more dimension, a bit more substance. Ooh. What's happened there? I've lost the end of that bit of twine. Let's make it a slightly bigger fold. Ooh. And try once more with feeling. That's better. Okay, let's take our paper snips and snip the ends. So there we are, we have a double bow, just because it was that little bit thinner. Right, so let's build our card up then. So we have our card base, we have our lovely lipstick layer. I'll put that on with some snail. There it goes. So who's started their Christmas shopping? Who's finished their Christmas shopping? I haven't even thought about it yet, particularly. Historically, I never have done particularly. I may have had vague thoughts about it, but although my children are now grown up, 2 of my children have birthdays coming up. So my youngest, my son Sam, his birthday is on Monday, and then my oldest, my daughter Charlotte, her birthday is the following Sunday. So it's always been the case that I haven't really seriously Christmas shopped until after their birthdays are. We've done birthdays, just because, you know, they used to have a list of things they wanted, and it used to be a question of waiting to see what they'd had for their birthdays before we decided what we were going to do for Christmas. So the same still applies, really. It just has never been my habit to do very much Christmas shopping until their birthdays. Were complete. Now, what I did when I was laying up these squares on the background is I put this corner just here on the second, on that sort of, well, it's sort of 2.5 ridges down. So this second complete ridge, I've rested that corner of that tree on that second ridge, because then I know that I can do the same on the other side. If I rest the corner of that tree on that second ridge and take it up to the top, then in theory they should be sitting at the same angle. And then this third tree, I shall raise that up with some dimensions. Let's put some of those on the back there. We'll raise that up and have that sitting across the top as well, and we'll put a couple of dimensionals on the back of our greeting. So we're not worried about these being pristine, sort of pristinely formed trees. Part of their charm is in the fact that they are sort of spread out, giving them that watercolory look. Let's grab a glue dot. Put that up on there, and we'll just add that little bow in there. So there we are. So finishing touch. Let us have a dig in our box of sparkly things. And I think I just want some normal rhinestones. Not that there's anything normal about these rhinestones. I just want some rhinestones, I think. They're just some small rhinestones that we are going to pick up. See my picky up thing, but we'll just use the end of our scissors, and we'll just put a few little, come here, mini rhinestones on these trees to give them some Christmas glitz and glamour. So that's 2 cards we've done using this sort of stamping and spritzing technique, the one we did on Monday, and this one, but similar technique. Very different looking card, finished cards. So that's that one. So yeah, very different from the one that we did on Monday, which was sort of all greens and, you know, nice green trees and those sorts of things. That one is very bright colours and sparkly and rather beautiful. So that's our first card. It's doing a bit more watercolouring and spritzing. Our second card is going back to the more traditional greens and reds. But this time we're going to use the heirloom frames. Now, I haven't got a here's one I made earlier for this one, but what I have got is a couple of different cards that I made earlier, and my thinking along this was I was going to take elements from both of these cards and bring them together into a card. So this was one of the cards that we made at our mega Christmas stamper stack yesterday. So yeah, we've got this sort of starburst of gold foil with some paper on the top. One tree's stamped, one's just punched out of paper, some ribbon, and this has got some gold embossing on it as well. So I quite like those trees. I really love this sort of tartany plaid tree. He is very lovely. So that was one card that I'd got in mind, and the other one was a card that has been doing the county tour, if you like, and this was using the heirloom frames, and it was using the oval frame, and I'd embossed it and then I'd run some copper ink over the top of it to sort of make it coppery. Did some copper embossing, and then used one of the baubles here and some dies from the Cup of Cheer set to give us a little bit of decoration on the bottom of that frame. So I thought we would go along the idea of having a frame and some trees, and we would see where that idea took us. So I thought to start with we would use the rectangular frame out of this set rather than the oval. I've got some sparkly bits, let's just pop those to one side. So I've already done a little bit of cutting. So I've created a card base. So again, 14.9 centimetres by 21 centimetres, scored at 10.5 to make our card base. But if you're elsewhere in the world and that's not your standard card base, I'm sure that you can tweak this to do your standard card bases. So then I've taken some of the paper from that perfectly plaid paper pack, and I've chosen this sort of predominantly green with a red check on it and the gold foil. So that's going to be my background. So that's been cut so that it is 10 centimetres by 14.4. And then I've got some other little bits and pieces here. I've got a piece of gold foil here that we're going to use to create our frame, and I've got a little bit of card here. Let's see, that was 6.5 centimetres by 9 centimetres that is going to sit at the back of our frame. So let's start by creating our frame, and then we can build from there. So I've got the rectangular frame here. So these dies, you get the heirloom frame dies, so you get a rectangular one and you get an oval one, and then along to go with them you get the embossing folders. So it does say that they're stamp, cut and embossed, so it all comes as a bundle. So this is your oval embossing, I don't know if you can pick that up, that's your oval embossing folder, and this is your rectangular embossing folder. So obviously we are going to use the rectangular die and the rectangular embossing folder. So I'm going to just need to grab my blue plate because this is one of the new style 3D folders. So we're going to need our new plate to do that. But first of all, we need to cut our frame. So we will just lay that onto our gold foil. grab our machine. And run that through the machine. That made some really good clinky clunky noises, didn't it? So that little rectangle of gold foil will come in very useful for something else along the way, I am sure. But here we have our gold frame. So the next thing we need to do is we need to line up that gold frame in this embossing folder. Now this does take just a minute or two wiggling round until you're happy with it, and you're happy that you sort of got an equal distance all around the outside. I'm not convinced that that is. Right, let's squeeze that and hope that that stays in place. Right, okay, so as I say, that does just take a little bit of wiggling until you're happy that it's in the right place, but it's worth doing that so as you're not disappointed when it's finished. So we're just going to have our base plate on there, 3D embossing folder, and our new blue plate that has been designed to work with the big shot and with these embossing folders. Right, so let's pop that on the floor. And we now have a very gorgeous gold frame. Look at that. How stunning is that? So we have our card, and I'm actually going to do it, let's get it the right way around. I'm actually going to do it so that it is landscape rather than portrait. Got our gold frame. I've got a stamped out starburst circle out of gold foil and a different, slightly different tartan paper. So this one is predominantly white background, but still has got that green and that red in. So it is sort of a very similar style, but just slightly different. So we're going to build that up like that. And we have our white card that's going to sit at the back that we're going to stamp our sentiment on. So the sentiment I think I'm going to go is the one that is going to be, I did say to somebody yesterday I'm going to make a card a day and send it to myself with this sentiment on. Because it says, hoping that your busy year comes together in Christmas cheer. That is just so apt. So let's put these to one side. Let's grab our frame and let's grab our sponge. And I think we'll use cherry cobbler, which is the red that's in this paper, for this sentiment. And we want it to be fairly central and sort of towards the top. Good stuff. Right, so that's going to come on here, and we're going to have this coming across here. And the other thing I thought I would take is some of the pine cones and the gold, so the Delicata Gold Glitz metallic ink. Let's find ourselves a tiny little block. And we'll just have these little gold pine cones down the bottom there, I think. Great stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some Tombow around the edge of this white mat. When I cut it, when I decided what size to cut it, I made sure that I'd given myself a little margin of wiggle room, so I can stick that down on there now. Okay. So I'm going to pop that to one side for a minute. We'll come back into that in a second. Let me just stick that piece of paper down to that starburst of gold foil, just so that they don't become separated. And then we want to stamp some of our trees. So I was going to stamp 2 and stamp and punch 2 and then punch 1 directly out of paper. So for the paper one, I'm going to use this spotty green. You can see we used that yesterday. It's got lots of tree shapes already cut out of it. So let's wiggle that in. Might need just to take it in a bit more, about like that. So there's one green spotty tree, just simply punched out of paper. And then we'll have a go at the tartan tree, just because it is so fabulous. So let's pop that up onto this block. And we'll use some shaded spruce, which is what we have used for the card base, and it's the green that's in those papers. So let's ink that up quite well and stamp that. And I definitely want to make sure I've got my sponge mat underneath here. It's quite a solid image and is sort of has got that sort of dimension in it that means that you really want to be able to get a good stamped image. So there's our plaid tree. Let's punch him out. Line up that punch and out pops our tree. And then for our final tree, I'm going to do this sort of 2-step stamp. So again, we're going to be using that sort of quite stylized tree, but we're going to be using that as our trunk. And I did get out some soft suede, but actually I'm quite tempted. Let's have a look. I'm going to ink it up in cherry cobbler, just because those are the colours that are in that paper. So let's ink that up with cherry cobbler. So that gives you your tree outline. Then there's this other little stamp in here that should line up and fill in those leaves. So let's Obviously with all of these sorts of stamps, if you're slightly off, it's okay. And it's never easy when you can't get your head directly over the top of it. But let's see how that goes. That's pretty good. So there we are, we've got cherry cobbler tree with shaded spruce leaves. So let's punch that out as well. Oh, that's quite fun, isn't it? Okay. Let's bring this down and let's bring this together. Right, so we'll start off by putting our designer series paper in the background. And the gold foil just makes this paper pop. It's beautiful. And obviously then, because we're putting gold foil itself on the top, even more beautiful. I'm going to bring that slightly to one side and I'm going to line it up with that line of foil just there, and actually it then sits quite nicely in between those two lines of foil. That is just pure coincidence. It would have depended on which way I cut the paper as to whether that would have worked or not. I'm then going to grab some of this lovely shaded spruce and gold ribbon, and we'll have a bit of a swirl of ribbon around the back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of strips of tear and tape down the back here, take the backs off, and then that will hopefully hold our ribbon in place as we go back and forth. Like that. Take our snips, and we'll raise that up with some dimensionals. Hi Wendy. Raise it up with some dimensionals just there, and then we've got our trees. So we need to decide which tree is going where. I think about that. So that back one I'll put some Tombow on. And I'll also put some Tombow on this one. And then we'll put a couple of dimensionals on the back of this one. Oh. Take those off. And then somewhere I have some of the holiday rhinestones. So let's put a few little red ones on this tree. that's a one gold one at the top of that tree. And then some green ones in amongst our pine cones. So there's lots of glitz and glamour going on with that card. So our two cards that we've created today, we've got this one that has taken on our idea of from Monday of stamping and spritzing to create that sort of watercolory wash effect. So this was our card on Monday that we sort of stamped these and spritzed them. But that was the solid tree. This one is that more stylized one, but we've used all those different coloured markers, all those bright colours that we used. Somewhere there's a pineapple punch just here. So we use the brush end of our really bright coloured markers to sort of just tap onto that tree before giving it a spritz and stamping it and punching those out. So that's a really bright card. As I say, moving on from that idea of watercolouring. And then the second card was combining a couple of cards that we've made over the last few weeks. So this card that we created yesterday at our Mega Stamper Stack, and this card that we'd created that's been doing the county tour. So we took together those two ideas of those trees on that circle and the frame and brought them together into a beautiful gold frame with our lovely trees, lots of gold foil and gold in the background there, and a little bit of gold stamping. So yeah, so two very different cards that go with all the other fabulous projects that we've been making with this great little stamp set and punch. And stamps and punch sets are always such good value, and they're good for anybody really, because you don't have to have any other machines or anything in order to create these lovely cards, because all you need is your stamp and then punch them out, which is obviously one of the reasons why this was the kit that made it into the goodie bag this year for the retreat ladies. So you don't also forget those lovely jingly bells that you can get, and the gold pizza boxes and that lovely ribbon. All of those things and fabulous papers are all part of this great little bundle. So do check that out. So whether you're spraying it and spritzing it, or just punching out of paper, or whether you're gold embossing or silver embossing, it's a fabulous set. So thank you for coming and joining me. It's time now to go and get some tea and finish preparing for tonight's bingo. And if you're coming to join us, I look forward to seeing you for our three little projects this evening. And I'll share those with the rest of you perhaps on Monday. But in the meantime, everybody have a really good weekend, and I will catch up with you all very soon.